I now invite Professor Chris Robinson to deliver the occasional address. Professor Chris Robinson is Head of the School of Management and Information Systems and the Victoria Graduate School of Management. Prior to his appointment at Victoria University in September 2007, he was Head of the School of Business at the University of Ballarat. He has also held positions at the University of Melbourne and the Australian Institute of Management, and has worked as a senior executive in international consulting companies. Professor Robinson is a psychologist with particular expertise in management development and strategic planning. He has extensive international experience in countries including China, Japan, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Kazakhstan, Norway and Oman. He was the inaugural Managing Director of the International University Consortium called Universitas 21 and managed the establishment of a major online education provider in Singapore. He holds a bachelor and master degrees from the Flinders University of South Australia and a PhD from La Trobe University. Please welcome Professor Chris Robinson.
Deputy Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, distinguished guests, graduates, ladies and gentlemen. After seeing the procession of graduates today, I wanted just to spend a very short time talking about some words that we've already used a number of times today and that we use almost without thinking in every day of our lives. They're the words information and knowledge. And I wanted just to talk about those and in particular how they relate to education. Information is essentially just a flow of data. There is nowadays any amount of information that passes in front of us constantly. It's easy for us to capture information, it's easy for us to keep it. We can carry it around in our pockets in tiny little devices that deliver it on demand. It tells us basic things only though. It tells us about who, where, when and who and why sorts of questions. What it doesn't do is add a great deal of value on its own. It's a temptation, it's a seduction to just think about information as an end in itself, the acquiring of it and the storing of it. The thing that universities do well, though, is to take information and turn it into something much more valuable, and that is knowledge. Knowledge is not just information, it's the application of information and the combinations and the comparing of information to understand things differently, to answer questions that begin with the word how. How does that work? How does that happen? So one of the key things about education, and particularly university education, is its emphasis on the development and the transmission of knowledge. University is regarded as highly important that we don't just simply transmit information to the students and then allow them to graduate at the end of a period of being subjected to that for a long period of time. Instead, we teach and we encourage the development of understanding of how to convert information into knowledge. Thinking about that, the other thing that occurs to me is that there is a step beyond that as well, and that's the hardest step of all, the step to go beyond creation and management of knowledge to the development of wisdom. Wisdom is a word we don't hear as much at the moment. We hear a lot about information, quite a lot about knowledge, but we don't hear a great deal about wisdom. Wisdom, in my judgment, is taking knowledge and adding experience to it. So the longer we work through a career, the more of that kind of information, that more knowledge we can bring together with our experience to create a real sense of wisdom and a real value that comes with that. Increasingly, one of the things that will be critical about quality education, particularly at the post-secondary level, will be the extent to which we can set people on the path to the getting and the improving of wisdom. When I was preparing this address, I thought a lot about how I could describe wisdom in a particular way. And thinking a lot about that, one of the things I kept coming back to was a colleague I worked with some years ago, an American colleague, who probably, as I think back on it, was the best example I can think of someone who was genuinely wise. I knew him when he was in his 70s, so he wasn't young by any means in a chronological sense. But the pace of his activity, the level of his wisdom, just the depth of what he did was something that was always astonishing. He was an internationally known academic, an internationally known researcher. He was involved in a major corporation that I also worked for, and that's how I came to know him. So he was involved, quite apart from a full academic load, in his 70s with major consulting projects in all sorts of parts of the world. And in addition to that, he had a very strong sense of community engagement. His particular area of study was entrepreneurship. And he didn't just teach that and do research in it, he also practiced it. He spent a lot of time in small villages in India developing entrepreneurial capacity in those communities so that they could become more a part of the modern world and so they could raise their standard of living. He, in many ways, for me, personifies wisdom. And the thing I remember most in thinking about him is a particular occasion when I had dinner with him one night in Singapore some years ago. And the thing I remember most about the dinner was I have no recollection at all of what the food was. I remember being terrified to eat in case I missed something. So he was a profound thinker in all sorts of ways and just a hugely influential person. And the thing that made him influential was that combination. He knew a lot. He was able to bring very diverse and apparently unrelated pieces of information together and combine them with a huge experience that he'd gained from all the different kinds of things he did. So if there's an example of where we're all heading, and this is a process that goes on right through our lives of developing wisdom, it's heading towards being something a bit like that. I was reminded of this in a slightly different way this morning over breakfast. This sounds rather mundane given what I've just talked about, but over a fairly hasty breakfast this morning, my 16-year-old son and I exchanged, as we do in the morning, very monosyllabic views of what we're doing each day. And he asked me what I was doing today, and I said I was giving this address at a graduation. And his spoonful of Weet-Bix paused on the way to his mouth, and he said, "That proves what I've been saying to you for ages. You're old." And I think he's right, but I feel somewhat comforted despite the words, because I think for him anyone over the age of 25 is old. But more than anything else, I think in a funny kind of way, I hope this is what he was saying, that he was recognising at least a minimal level of wisdom. I hope that's what that was about. Perhaps I'll leave that there before I think any more about it. Could I turn from that just to congratulate today's graduates, congratulate you on a long period of hard work, on your success, and wish you well into the future. Can I finally suggest to you, in the nicest of ways, that you too are now old? Thank you.